ለመማር ወደ ትምህርት ተቋም መሄድ ግድ አይደለም። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
ራሳችሁን ከኮሮና ቫይረስ ወረርሽኝ እየጠበቃችሁ በቤታችሁ ወይም በተመቻችሁ ቦታ በኢንተርኔት አማካኝነት በኦንላይን ትምህርታችሁን መከታተል ትችላላችሁ።
ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ኢንስቲትዩት ኦፍ ኮመርሻል ማኔጅመንት ICM ጋር በመተባበር የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶችን ተከታትላችሁ በ6 ወር ጊዜ በዓለም አቀፍ ደረጃ ተቀባይነት ያለውን የስልጠና ማስረጃ ባለቤት መሆን ይቻላል።
ልምድ ባላቸው መምህራን እየተማራችሁ ጥያቄና መልስ፣ የክፍል ስራዎች፣ ፈተና መፈተን ክፍል ውስጥ እንዳላችሁት አይነት በኦንላይን ባላችሁበት ቦታ ከናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ
on vertical boundaries of the farm. In the vertical boundaries of the farm are key decisions that the management needs to make. Key among them is whether to buy or to make, whether it's parts or it's a complete item, whether to make in-house. When you're talking about making, you're talking about making in-house. If you're talking about buying, you are something that is from outside the organization. So these are key corporate decisions that managers need to make so that they can be able to drive the competitiveness that we've talked about. So there are a lot of discussions about what firms should do. So as corporate managers, you need to sit down, interrogate the options that are there, possibilities that are there, interrogate your business environment vis-a-vis your position in the industry. And then after that discussion, then you need to make a final decision. Well, it may not be final necessarily, whether to make or buy. It may not be final because you may start making, and then midway, you find that it's untenable, so you reverse that. Then you start buying. You start buying, but midway, buying will not work. So you start what we may be calling outsourcing, right? If you are making and then you fail, maybe that one may be insourcing. So those are critical decisions that the top management must make so they can be able to, assist the organization to get the best deal. So now we're going to start the class, and then I'm going to mute all of you. Okay. Okay, so what I was saying is that this discussion is about the vertical boundaries. We already looked at the vertical scope of the farm, and we know what it is. It's a movement from the top supply chain down, make or buy decisions, and of course, buy from the market is basically the buy part of the buy decisions, or maybe do it yourself. When you're doing do it yourself, then you are making. So this happens in the chain. In logistics, you call it the supply chain. It is still the supply chain, even in strategy. But this from the suppliers of suppliers, then raw materials, then the focal farm, then manufacturing, distribution, and all that up to the final consumer. That is the chain we are talking about. Therefore, that chain, as we've seen previously, we looked at the value chain by Michael Porter. It's a very interesting part whereby you can be able to derive competitiveness by, making the right decision at the right time, so that you can be able to assist your farm, to be more competitive. Um, so that is it, and that is a vertical. That's an illustration. There are better illustrations than this, but this one just shows what you call upstream and downstream. The farm is in the middle. You see the manufacturing and so forth. So upstream is, is the suppliers. It's where you get the raw materials. That is, if you're involved in direct manufacturing. If you are not manufacturing, you are just buying for resale. It still becomes your raw materials. Then the manufacturing, that is the farm where manufacturing takes place, and then you have distribution. Then you have retailing. That's the final. Then the customer is down there. So this one you call it downstream. The other one is upstream. In other discussion, we call it backward. The other one we call forward. It's the same thing, right? Forward is the downstream. Upstream is the backward. Remember, we talked about vertical integration, backward integration, and so forth. That's the nexus of all this. So basically, the vertical boundaries of the farm normally show the activities that are within the supply chain that a farm should do and which should be performed by other people in the market. Therefore, buying instead of making. Those activities that the farm does itself or performs itself, then those become making to quotes, because there may be not necessarily be direct manufacturing per se. And then the ones that it gets from the market, then you call that buy into quotes. So you have the make or the buy problem. And then that should be linked to the strategy of the farm strategy. You can start either way, but the best way is to start from the strategy and then you organize supply chain. But we said for some farms that may be existing, then you may find yourself organizing your operations to meet the strategy. You already have the operations because you're an existing farm. So you need to make or buy decisions to fit the farm strategy. So those are what we call the vertical boundaries. They are basically buy or make or buy decisions. There are some fallacies in the make or buy decisions, basically by players in the industry. Most of these may not hold. Some of them may hold, but most of them may not hold. For example, it is a common fallacy that farms should make. Many people think that the layman thinks that the farm should always make and not buy. But that's not the case. Because buying and making is scientific. It can be quantified. You can be able to establish the value you are getting. And therefore, as a strategist, you don't use the fallacy, you use rationale. You do analysis and then you find out whether buying or making is the best decision. But outside there, people will say, we want to make, we want to do this. Of course, they say that when you do this, you avoid making the product. But remember, sometimes, in most of the times, the person who makes the product and sells, he sells at a profit, right? So it may be true to some time that the farm that makes a product and then sells to another farm, it sells at a profit. So what if that farm wants to make that product itself? It could make double profits. That's another fallacy maybe. When we are talking about diversification, integration, we saw this, whereby we have backward linkages. Farms are negotiating with farmers, and having some agreements. Instead of the farm going to buy raw materials from the market per se, under market forces, then it decides to, actually, like the farm is the one that is making because it owns the factors of production. So more fallacies continue there. They say that a firm should produce a service or a product to tie the distribution channel. Yes. If there is a high competition in the distribution channel, then a firm can tie a distributor, that is forward or upstream. But not always the case. There are firms that have not tied the distributors and they are competitive. So it will depend with the situation you are facing. Firms should provide a service or a product to avoid paying a margin to an independent firm. Yes, but if that makes competitive advantage for you, then you should. That's what you find in the air industry. No firm that makes all the parts, even in the car industry, they outsource. You know? So that fallacy again may not hold. They outsource because of reasons that it will be more economical, it will be more versatile, to outsource and check quality and all that on all these decisions. So the make or the buy decision is a very critical decision. When you're making a decision, it's supposed to be long-term. It's part of strategic decision. But until you've succeeded in that decision is when you can know whether it is going to last. Because as I said, you can enter into a contract, it doesn't work out, you have to pull out. You can start producing yourself, you find it is not tenable, it is not compatible. You get another supplier who makes at a cheaper price than you do. So by buying, you may be experiencing more benefits than making it yourself. Right? That is where now the dilemma is. Therefore, that's why I say the management must make the right decision after considering all the possible outcomes. So basically, when they are making this decision, they have to check whether compare between upstream and downstream, that is the raw materials and the finished goods, and see the multiplicity of activities that are provided and how they can be able to derive competitive advantage by making the right choice. Right now, there is no best choice. This is you must do, you must buy, or you must make. No. Different firms will be faced by different situations, different market situations. If firms are new in the industry, they may buy, right? If firms are market leaders, they may make. If you're entering into a new market today, most likely you'll not manufacture. You'll start with exporting. And then later you can think about all these other decisions. So this the decision falls between what you may call from less integrated to integrated, less integrated to most integrated. This starts with market transactions, as you can see from that diagram there. Market transactions, then you go long-term contracts. You can go for alliances. You can go for subsidiary relationships. Or you can perform the activity internally, this make. If it's most integrated, then you are more likely to make the product itself. But if it's less integrated, it means you can perform the core functions in your business, and then outsource, buy all the other activities that may not be core. And of course, this is a vertical chain of production. I think that but this is a little bit more details. You have raw materials, you have transportation, housing, you have processing, you have transportation, assembly, and all that, up to the final retail. The support services, remember the value chain. Accounting, if your firm is not purely accounting, you can outsource accounting because it's a support activity, right? That means they are less integrated with your farm, with your activity. But if accounting, if you are an auditing firm, for example, then you cannot outsource accounting. You may not outsource accounting function because it is core, it is key to the business. But you can outsource some like human resource, you can get from outside. Legal support, unless you are a very, very big firm, you may not have your legal department. Small firms, you outsource. Marketing it's a core function in many organizations. So you may find that, planning and so forth. So it's a management to sit down based on scientific analysis, maybe a cost benefit analysis, and see what should be outsourced and what should not be outsourced. Just 1 minute. Let me address. Yeah, so that's the way it is, and therefore management use that to be able to establish uh, what kind of activity to outsource. So maybe what are the determinants of either buying or making? What determines? We look at each one independently, but generally the cost is a key factor, the cost of production. If the cost for making is lower, then you make. If the cost for outsourcing is lower, then you outsource, which is buy in this case, right? If cost of carrying inventory, maybe the raw materials in this case, the cost of raw materials is very high, then you try to avoid that, right? If the cost of inspection is very much, then you outsource or you buy from the market and so forth. All this is majorly one of the key, well, not cost, but one of the key considerations. Whether to buy or to make is the issue of cost. And you know very well what is the role of cost in production in a farm, the marginal cost, and how it relates with um, total cost, marginal cost, and revenue. So the cost becomes a key thing in any production process in a production farm. Maybe how do you make the decision? Scientifically, you can use 3 methods. You can use what we call simple cost analysis. You can use economic analysis, or you can use break-even analysis. 3 key. Now, simple cost analysis, you just check on the individual cost of items, maybe the purchase price. Remember, in our production system, there are so many cost centers, but the simple costs are the direct costs. For example, cost of labor, cost of machine hours, procurement cost, carrying cost, all this. Those are simple cost analysis. If you find that these costs are skyrocketing as compared to buying, then you buy. It's just a simple analysis. You don't go to the deep side. Then we have economic analysis. This is a long-term analysis that determines the overall value that you get, the final expected value of a transaction. Again, it is cost-based. What are the benefits and what are the costs associated? It's a long-term analysis that has to be thoroughly evaluated and look at the future. Maybe what are the economic values of buying? What are the economic values of making over a long period of time? Then you have break-even analysis, very common. It's also a symbol, but not as simple as the cost analysis. Break-even analysis is whereby you are comparing the revenues and the costs. At the point they break, at the point the revenue is equals to the cost, that's what we call break-even point. So it means any other revenue that comes after that point is a profit to the organization. And at this point, profits is equals to 0. Let me correct here. Oh, gone far away. Let me correct here. As a break-even point, not plus, but the profits, sorry, the profits are normally equals to 0. So now you are looking at the break-even point when you are doing this analysis and see if you are breaking even earlier when you are purchasing, that is when you are buying, then you go for that. If you are breaking earlier when you are manufacturing it yourself, then you go for that. That's what it means, the break-even. Remember, there is what we call sensitivity analysis in product management that may start earlier, even before you produce a product. Remember the process of making a product: idea generation, prototype, business analysis, right? Business analysis and break-even analysis are similar. They are related. It's a cost-benefit analysis. So that you can be able to know if you sell, if you buy 10 items, then you sell. At what time do you break even? Holding other factors constant. If you make these 10 items and you sell, at what level do you break even? So you check the one that you break even earliest is always the best decision in business for investors. And even when it comes to project evaluation, projects that tend to break even fast tend to be better decisions, of course, holding other factors constant. So now when you're analyzing these decisions, you need to check, the decision you're about to make, whether it is buy, how is it? Is it a strategic decision? The reason being that some decisions may be short-lived. For example, if you get an order for an outlier business, that means it's not continuous business forever. Then if it is not strategic, then you don't make. Because making means you buy plant and machinery, you invest, then you bring into the farm. Now, if you invest a lot in plant and machinery and other commitments, and it is for a short period of time, after that order is over, what do? You close shop, and that will be a loss. So that's the first decision you need to make. Is it strategic? Is it long-term? If it is long-term, then do not outsource. If it is short-term, just outsource or buy for that matter. So if it is strategic, yes, avoid outsourcing, but it does not mean directly you make. Your further analysis is needed. You need to go back and break down, the system, the components, the parts, right? And then see how they are. If the item can be broken down into parts and components, then you can make that. If it cannot be broken down, it means it's complex. If it can be broken down, then you need to look at the components, how they are. You need to dissect the product or the idea. If are the parts strategic? If no, then again you outsource, right? If they are strategic, then you need to make in-house, because it means you'll be in that business for quite some time. So basically the criteria for making, if the product can be made cheaper by the farm, that's a tick. It can be made cheaper by the farm. If the finished product is not very common in the market, in the industry, it means it can be manufactured by only limited farms in the industry. Then it is better to make it yourself. Simply because remember the five forces model. Remember the bargaining power of the supplier, the bargaining power of the customer. Now, if the threat of entry, it means if the farms making this product are few, the threat of entry may be low. Maybe it's a capital intensive business. So that means those small farms will be monopolizing the industry. And more importantly, that means the price per unit may not go down very soon because the farms will be the price makers. Again, you'll be giving the supplier a lot of power. Remember the beginning power of the supplier. If the suppliers are limited, they become very powerful. They can control your business. Now, if you are being controlled by the suppliers and the distributors, it's not easy for you to be competitive. Most competitive farms tend to do things that are outstanding. But if, remember again, we talked about resources, valuable, rare, immutable, valuable, rare, not duplicable, right? So that's why we're talking about the limited. If there's some limitedness, then it means making that item could be better. And then maybe can the products be manufactured from existing facility that you have? If yes, then you have an advantage. It is like an extension of your business. So maybe what are more reasons why you should buy? If there is greater assurance of supply. We talked about strategic. It's going to last long, right? If it's going to last long, then you better make. The quantities are too small, maybe. Although I've studied the strategy becomes more important, right? Maybe there are quality requirements that may not be met by outsiders, or you are dealing with very specific, parts of our product that maybe security-wise, that means you should not expose this to any outsiders. Will you be able to obtain lower cost? Again, the issue of cost comes back, very, very important. If you are going to obtain at a lower cost, then if you're going to make at a lower cost, then you do it. For example, it may be whatever you are making may be a byproduct of one of your production processes. Most farms that do maize milling and wheat milling and grain milling tend also to go into animal foods or animal feeds, because the waste product, it basically becomes the animal feed, right? So if you do the milling of maize or wheat or rice, those husks and those whatever, majorly they are used for animal feeds and fertilizer making, right? So instead of going to buy animal feeds for your farm, what we were explaining the other time, you use that and, it becomes easy because that's a byproduct, it's a waste product of that. Maybe the organization has some idle equipment or untapped capacity, or it's operating at a lower capacity, then you need to make use of your capacity so that you don't need to go and procure outside. You're using the corporation's own assets to manufacture that product. If you don't want sole dependency, I think we've talked about that under the criteria. You don't want to depend so much on somebody. That dependence is not good. Like now, this case we are facing now, the COVID-19, farms are suffering. You've seen manufacturers in Africa suffering, not manufacturers, but suppliers in Africa suffering. Farms suffering because for some time, transport to China and from China has been a nightmare. Before, of course, they contained the spread of the disease. So what does that mean? Simple things like masks, PPEs, ventilators. That's why now you've seen now people have to make, countries have to make, because it's been a nightmare. I don't know whether you are making them in your place there. In our place, we've already started making, because at first, it was very hard to get these things from China, especially with the big demand that was there. And this goes across all supplies that you get from suppliers. You are giving the supplier dependency, or rather you are giving supplier power, and you are making more dependent on that supplier. That is not very good. It may not create that kind of competitive advantage for the farm. So all these are reasons that may assist the farm to make the decision to make instead of buying. If you have a good quality team, you are more likely to produce a more quality product or service. And therefore, you are happy with that instead of outsourcing. If management takes pride in its works, in its business, especially in technical engineering aspects and departments, then that is better. It's better to do that. It also assists the firm to continue doing research and innovation, creativity, and research in that area. And therefore, they have the powers that, they have the mandate to do that. They can be able to easily improve on those products as compared to if they are manufacturing from outside. Other consideration, that's still a continuation. Cost consideration, yes. Desire to integrate planned operations, yes, very important. If you have a seamless production run, what you call continuous production run in a farm, then you want to integrate the farm operations, then you make it. Excess capacity, I think we talked about that. Exact direct control, we talked about that, of production and quality, and if there is a design secrecy required, of course, yes. We said up to today, the formula for Coca-Cola has not been put out to the public. That's why they are able to make it. I think in America, that means they are not going to, although they have plants across the world, but those plants are only called bottling plants. Don't know whether you have some in Ethiopia there. Everything comes in a container, you just add water maybe and sugar, then you serve the drink. That means they are still making everything. They have not given the rights because of the design secrecy that is required. Otherwise, everybody will make his own Coke, and that competitive advantage that Coke enjoying for many years can be, taken away in a day or two. Unreliable suppliers, yes, I think we've explained this. Although we talked about the challenges in the supply chain, but if you have unreliable suppliers, then they can easily damage your business. You need to make it yourself. You also need to have a stable workforce. Sometimes if this department is not doing well, or this department, the work is less, you can move those people to the other department and so forth. Other consideration include the coordination problem. You don't want to coordinate the suppliers and so forth. You fear leakage of information. I think we've talked about this, the case of Coca-Cola. To share private information to other firms, it can be dangerous. Then, of course, the issue of costs. Very important. Rent costs, hold-up costs, transport costs, site costs, human costs. All these costs per se are key things that will make a farm not to buy, but to purchase. And then a problem of contracts, supply contracts, if you buy, you are going to enter into contracts. Contracts is not that easy it brings a challenge, to the players in the industry. There's what we call bounded rationality, the ability, the capacity to process information, you know. There's what we call asymmetric information in a contract. And I think we saw this yesterday and the other day, that one party can use that information for the benefit of himself or herself at the detriment of the other person. That is a problem with contracts in supply. In this case, we are talking about supply contracts when you are buying. Criteria for buying. Now we are done with the making. If there's very high investments that are required in making, then you don't, you buy, especially if it is short term. You cannot, for example, there are elections, I think, in your country, or is it where? I'm not sure. We have election in Uganda. You cannot go and set up plant and machinery to print just campaign materials. Campaigning is for 1 month or maybe 2 months. You need to outsource, because after the campaign is over, where do you take that plant and machinery? That's why, there is huge investment required to have a plant and machinery that can manufacture campaign materials. Therefore, what do? Look for a strategic partner who enjoys economies of scale, let him supply to you, let you buy from that facility or from that supplier. Also, you do not have facilities for making, yes, that means it goes with the first one. If the skilled workers are not available, if you don't have the technology, you don't have the skill, then you don't invest in that. If demand is temporary, and we saw this when we are talking about the make decision, if demand is temporary or seasonal, you have to be very, very careful so that you don't put yourself in a precarious situation. You invest, then you find there's no business. And then if there are patents or legal formalities that prevent you from making the product, yes. Like now, as I said, you cannot make what? Cork. You can only do bottling. And there are many other products that you need franchise, you need licensing, you need trademark to be able to purchase. But costs again come in, economies of scale. If you are buying at a cheaper price, then you buy. Right? Very, very bottom. If you are buying at a lower price, then you buy. Because the other person enjoys economies of scale. He makes in big numbers, big units. He is able to sell at reduced price. If you are to do it yourself and you make few units, cost of production will be high. Remember, there is rent. Basically fixed cost, rent, labor, licenses, and so forth. So it becomes untenable for you to invest for a short term. Business and of course, bureaucracy effects and costs again. The bureaucracy effects are the ones for, when you are trying to start that production, maybe in a country, you have to get license, you need permission, you apply it takes a month, it takes 2 months, that kind of procedure. With the COVID-19 now, procedures, most government operations are down, so it can take you forever to be able to get all this. Then, of course, avoiding costs, again, the issue of agency costs, the issue of influence costs when you are influencing the decisions. So these are reasons why you lack the managerial or technical expertise, you lack production capacity. I think you've seen that. Suppliers have a good reputation for supplies, so you don't need to go and try to challenge them. Maybe you also need to, you've already made a decision. Once it is made, it's often difficult to reverse, of course, but with a dot there, with an asterisk, because if the decision is not working, then for how long can you go? Then costs, of course, cost, very, very important. Sufficient volume, most of this may be repeated, so you can just check on them on your own time. Highly capable supply is available nearby. Now, Tomorrow we'll be talking about, not tomorrow, but the other day, we'll be talking about interorganizational relationships and competitive advantage. So now, depending on the firm that you want to relate with, there are things that, there are items that you can accept to buy, right? So that you can have good relationships with other people in the industry. Especially if they are big producers, they are market leaders, so that you also don't provoke them into business, in the business. That way you'll be safe, because if they are selling to you, you know, you make a good, you have good inter-organization relationships, so you are more like friends. Friends don't go to war. Friends don't fight each other. Right? You may be shocked if they are supporting you in that business and so forth. So all these are ways of reasons why you should limited production facilities, small volume requirements. You've seen about this. The supplier has specialized equipment and know-how and technology, then it's more likely to, you're more likely to buy instead of to make. I think some of these are also repeated and so forth. Again, the issue of transaction cost comes in. Contract negotiation writing becomes a challenge. But of course, if a contract is properly executed, then you shouldn't have a problem. But of course, those problems may arise. So these are costs, rent costs. You can read much about this. Hold up a problem and the transaction costs these may arise in the transaction so forth. Mistrust, increased investment, bargaining power, position, and so forth. There are reasons why you should be able to buy instead of make. Then you have the issue of outsourcing, pretty important. Outsourcing reverses a previous make decision. I said that when we were starting here. It reverses a previous make decision. If you are making and it's not working out, then you reverse that decision. No matter how strategic it is, then you outsource. So it means that the product or service previously done in the house will be purchased. So it is not necessarily the buy. The buy comes after, right? The buy comes after. If making has failed, then you have to outsource. So again, there's a procedure for outsourcing. I think those people in procurement and contract management will tell you how to identify the suppliers, supplier selection and analysis and evaluation. You have to go this, look at the technical capability of the suppliers, the financial capability, compatibility, and so many other things, including ethics and so forth, before you are able to get it outsourcing. But outsourcing is becoming an issue of concern nowadays. There's a lot of outsourcing so that firms can focus on their core business. There are also outsourcing experts outside there will advise you what you should do. Maybe you outsource IT, you outsource management, you can outsource accounting. Some of the functions that may not be very key or may not be very core in your decision. So the reason for outsourcing are similar to making or buying decisions. It's only that in this time you are stopping the buy decision and you are going for the outsourced. Then we also maybe what are the concerns of outsourcing? Yes, very important. And these are the concerns that are addressed by making. But of course, if making fails, you have to go for outsourcing. Loss of control, we've talked about this. Exposure to supplier risk. Your suppliers are not reliable. They'll bring you a lot of challenges, If they are unresponsive, if they have poor delivery qualities and daily qualities, unexpected fees, extra charges. If a good stay in the warehouse for a day or another day, they'll charge you and so forth. Conversion costs, supply restraints, and so forth. You know, approvals. You know, there are also aspects about outsourcing that may affect. Um, Outsourcing and purchasing and logistics come together. Remember, these are the feeders of the supply chain. Without purchasing and logistics, the supply chain will suffer. Will suffer what is called a lack of agility. An agile supply chain is one that is efficient because the purchasing and logistic function is moving well. But if that fails, then it means the logistics, the purchasing. I mean, if the purchasing fails, it means the logistics and the whole supply chain will be in a big mess. Then we have and the insourcing is whereby this is whereby you reverse previous buy decision. We've seen reasons why you buy, but we said it is not final. You may go in, buy, but as you move on, you find it's not working. So what you do, you have to reverse that decision, right? You have to reverse that decision. So it can choose to bring in-house activity, a product or service previously purchased outside. That is what we call insourcing. So you should not confuse that with outsourcing. Um, so it's basically you are reversing the buy decision. You decided to buy, but it's not going on, so you change. Maybe there have been massive increase in prices. There are challenges in the supply chain. There are other costs that you do not intend or you do not envisage. For example, warehousing costs. You may be buying goods from, you may be importing goods, but once the goods come to the custom clearance, they may be taking a month before clearance. What does that mean? It means you are paying demurrage costs that may be high. That may not be good for you because they are increasing what? Your cost of doing business. Other things like poor quality, poor delivery, delays, lack of flexibility, uh, not getting the competitive advantage that you've been looking for will make you to reverse the previous buy decision. And maybe you can also consider this. We looked at the first scenario. Now you have to check on what you want to, the items that you want to buy or you want to make. So you need to ask yourself, do the suppliers have the right capabilities? Do you have the right capabilities to have an in-house unit to manufacture those items? Then you can answer yes. Remember, this is a decision. Then do you have significant relationship, specific assets? Are there significant coordination problems? We saw one of the problems of outsourcing is, not outsourcing, but purchasing is coordination problems. Then if no, then you need to move. You are almost, if you answer no to most of these, you are basically looking for outsourcing. You are basically looking for buy, right? But if you are most of them, you are answering yes. Is it costly or not? Yes or no. If it is too costly, then you're moving towards the market, which is buying. If it is not, then you are moving towards manufacturing, which is the vertical integration, because you are increasing your scope of production and so forth. Do you have is common ownership needed to mitigate contracting problems? If no, then if yes, like that. So that's how you make the decision. On the other side, if your answer was no, will you need alliances, arrangements? Will you need partnership arrangements. If no, then you go for vertical alliance, vertical integrate. That means you make. If yes, then you need also to check what kind of alliances would you need. If you need joint ventures, that means you are getting from the suppliers because you're supporting each other and so forth. So maybe a small discussion. I hope all of you are on board. I want to inform you that we have a discussion, and of course, you know how we do it. We animate all the speakers. Hello there.
We're together.
Yes, now there's that. Yeah. I want your contributions. Now, justify the decision to make or to buy in corporation. Why should farms buy? Why should farms make? And how does that bring competitive advantage? And that's a question.
Doctor.
Yes, I cannot see your hand. Or is that?
It's Shimelis.
Yes. Let me look for your.
You know, this, I don't know whether it is as a friend or not, but these questions and discussion is better wait for me because one of this topic is given as an assignment and it is my topic.
This is your assignment.
Yeah, so everybody, if you have any questions, now what I want is if they have questions on this area, let's say wait for after 3 or 2 weeks.
After the discussion.
Better, it's my topic, yeah.
Presentation, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think better. I think let's say bring their own question what you have around this make or in-house in-sourcing or buying or outsourcing. If they do have any questions, they are welcome after 3 weeks. This is my topic.
Why not today?
No, I want to say is if they do have any questions. If they do have, they can raise. But this is my topic, so I'm preparing my PowerPoints, and I don't know where we are going to submit after 3 or 2 weeks, I think.
Okay, so another person with a discussion or something. I think today we are how many? Today we are 10. Not very bad. Another discussion about that. What is your take on this? This is open to everybody. What's your take? Anybody there, please?
Okay, can I continue?
Yes, Kamal.
As my understanding, this make or buy decision is more related with corporate strategy because once you decide this, like making or buying a product or a service you have, it will have a huge impact in the profitability or the competitiveness of the company. So this decision is under the corporate strategy, and each time, whether you outsource or you insert decisions, should be incorporated in the corporate strategy of the company. And for the second part is what you already discussed. There are different points for making or buying decisions, the reasons we are picking, which is all incorporated in the corporate strategy. That's my idea.
Yes, it's a good discussion. Basically, as you discuss this, you also need to bring in the concept of strategy in it. in the sense that you need to illustrate how it brings competitive advantage. How does buying derive competitive advantage, and how does making derive competitive advantage for the farm? So as you when you talk about strategy, but the discussion is okay. The points are quite valid. I think Samuel, your hand is up. I can see.
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to give my take on this issue. So I was looking at it from the service given point of view, like what do we want to make and what do we want to buy? Like as long as the things that we want to buy or make aren't the core competitive the core competencies of a company, I think uh, we'll have to make such a decision of whether we want to make the item or the service, or we want to buy it. Uh, for instance, I just wanted to give an example, like if a company, a service-giving company, like my company, that does a software engineering, so we want to have this decision of whether we want to outsource it, I mean to buy it, or to give it to somebody else, to a third party to make it, or to do it by ourselves. So it depends on the strategy we do have. I would assume, for instance, if the company would want to buy a service of customer handling of calls and giving technical support, which can be easily done by a third party, then that's okay. I would assume. But then, if it is the core competencies of a company, like developing the software, especially when it comes to the secrecy of a business, then we'll have to make such a decision whether we want to do it with a third party or by ourselves. Then the decision especially depends on the profit, whether it is more costly to do it in-house or elsewhere, or whether it is more secure to do it, especially when it comes to business secret in-house, or maybe to do it with third party, or to buy it elsewhere. So I think this is my take from your discussion.
Right, right. That's quite in order. Another person with yeah, yeah. Your hand is up. Yes, yes, go ahead.
Can I say something, sir?
Yes.
Well, I think the decision to make or to buy in corporate strategy, a company must review some points, or must consider some points. The first one is the size of the company. It will make an influence on either to make or to buy. To make or to buy. For instance, in a large company, it depends on the financial implication of for growing concern. Whereas in small companies, if the company's annual expenditure is very low, it's better to buy instead of buy materials instead of making it. The other criteria for deciding or buying is the difficulties in manufacturing. You know, if there is a difficulty in manufacturing, the company should decide whether to buy or make decisions. The other thing is quality of goods. The quality of goods impact on making or buying decisions. I think this is what I can say.
Yeah, yes, that's quite okay. Maybe can see a hand for Konji. Your hand is up.
Yes, I just want to say in Ethiopia, Ethiopian Road Authority provided for Ethiopian contractor to make a road. When they couldn't finish it on the schedule, they took it back and provided it to other company, Chinese company. Can we say this like the, the decision can be returned for making or buying the service?
Yeah, that's okay. Shibless, I think your hand is up.
Yeah, I would like to add 2 points. First, the reason we like to justify why make or buy is it is in the corporate strategy is because make or buy, it is a core decision for any firm or for any business organization or any non-profit making company. So that is the reason why it is given by the corporate strategy. And also when you evaluate in the, there's the two different in the making or buy, any decision for or making or buying a decision, it depends on the resource. When you say the resource, it's both tangible or intangible resource. In addition to that resources, we should consider our profitability and bring into consideration our cost benefit analysis. So it's not simply let's make it or let's buy it. But so we should make first, we do have enough ample resource, tangible and intangible. Then after we should make analysis of our profit cost benefit analysis. I think this is the reason.
All right. Another person, any? Yes, someone.
Had raised a question. She was asking if she was giving an example of the roads authority, that the authority, which is the highest power of the government here in Ethiopia, that awards road projects to companies, and she was saying that the authority gave the roads projects to local companies, the Ethiopian companies, but then since they couldn't make it, the authority then outsourced it or gave it away to the Chinese, which are foreign companies. So she was asking if this is considered as buying it as buying or not. That was her question. Um, I think you get it. So
Oh, okay. I did.
yeah,
I lost it.
yeah. So to me, I think to my understanding, it's the same because the roads authority doesn't do it by itself. So whether it's giving it to the Ethiopian or to the Chinese, I would consider it as if it's buying. Yeah.
Shibless, you want to answer the same. You want to answer Konji.
Enough.
Yes. You want to
Okay.
answer Konji?
Yeah, that's what my question
Okay.
was. Why should you like to bring this question? Because if somebody make outsource, whether it is for a foreigner or for local company, it is outsourcing is outsourcing.
Yes. Another comment. Yes, I think if I didn't get, I'm sorry, I had not gotten your question, please. That's why I did not respond. But as I have said, once you outsource, once you let another supplier or another contractor to do the work, you are not doing it yourself, then that is a buy decision, right? That is a buy decision. Now, if that supplier or contractor fails, and then you get another supplier or contractor, it is still a buy decision, right? But if the farm fails, and then the Ethiopian roads company does it, right? Then that becomes in-house, right? It becomes a reversed buy decision, right? It becomes a reversed buy decision for that particular farm. Now, if the Ethiopian Roads Authority does the work itself, then it will be in sourcing, right? But if it gives another farm to do the work, just like the one that had been given, then that is still by decision, which is outsourcing. It's a by decision. If the farm does it itself, it becomes in-house. But if it gives it to another supplier, that's a case of supplier failure. You know, if the supplier fails, then you engage another supplier. That's why we talk about those people in procurement. We'll find things like subcontracting, because I believe the firm that was given the work had done some part of it. I believe so. And therefore, to protect the organization, to protect the government, what they do is they subcontract the remaining part of the road. And this it was 0%. But if it was 10% or 20%, then you subcontract the remaining part, and it is still a buy decision. Okay, any question, another question? Today we seem to have a short discussion. Our class today is a little bit brief. Any question or any discussion? Anything you want addressed? I mean, if there's any chat here. Some discussion. Okay. I think nothing in the chat to be addressed. Any other issue you need to be addressed? Do you have a small, I think the class was brief. Yes, Jerusalem.
Yes, sir. I want to ask one question. Is there any difference between buying and outsourcing? Is there any difference between the concept of buying and outsourcing?
Is there any difference between buying and outsourcing? Is there a difference? What is the difference between buying and sourcing? What is the difference between making and insourcing? Because if you go for one, it's good you go for everything, you know, because they are closely related. What's the difference between buying, making, insourcing, outsourcing? Yes. Nobody hand up. Who is hand up? What's the difference? I think Biuzam, where you, Samra, it is there, Yob is there. Where is Agos?
Yes.
Where is Agos? I have not seen him today. Samuel is there, Shimeles is there. Okay. Okay. Who's hand? Samra, it is. What's the difference between
Outsourcing,
making, outsourcing? Yes, go ahead.
It's a reversal of making, which means it was previously we decided to make those products by our own. So it is like a reversal. But buying from the start, we could decide buying from outside. That's my understanding, and vice versa for the in-source.
Yes. So if you are making, okay, I said we go for all of them, the four of them. If you are making, you are producing in the farm. You are producing it yourself. That is buying. sorry, that is making, that is clear. You have a production plant, you have a farm in your facility where you are making the product. That is making, purely. If you are buying, it means you are buying finished product, right? You are buying a finished product from the market. That is buying. I think the confusion for Jerusalem is between the insourcing and outsourcing. Okay, yes, your hand is up. Please, can you go ahead, Samuel?
Okay. I'm not sure if I'm right, but I would consider it as products, a tangible one, and a service. I would assume making is something you do, a thing which is tangible, like if you are manufacturing, for instance, furnitures or something to do with something that is that we can touch. I think we could say we're doing a making decision, while sourcing I would say is service type, like the service we do have. For instance, I could buy a product, furnitures, or maybe a thing from outside, but then I could also, on the other side, I could outsource a service. So I would say it's something to do with tangibility and intangibility, to my understanding.
Well, Samuel, to some extent, but not to all extent. Like sometimes, yes, I'm coming to you, Konji. Just I'm coming to you, Jerusalem. I'm coming to you, Shimles. I'm coming to you. Now, when you talk about making, the decision to make, you can still produce services, not just tangibles alone. For example, a firm can decide to get a management from outside to manage their farm. That is outsourced outside management.
Right.
They can still use their own management. If they are using their own management to manage that farm, that is make. That's why you find the make is in quotes.
Oh.
The buy is in quotes because it's inclusive. A firm may outsource accounting services, right?
Yep.
Accounting and auditing services. That means it does not use its own what? Services. That will be buy. But if the firm uses its own accounting people inside the firm, then that is make. That's why it is in quotes. So it's not just necessarily services. Yes, a little bit services, but not purely, right?
Okay.
Not purely. Yep. The idea is this. The idea is this. If the firm does the activity, whether it is physical production or non-physical production, then that is make. The firm is doing it itself. If the firm gets somebody else to do it on their behalf, that is buy. They are buying that service or that product. Right? Okay.
Yep.
So we go to Konji. Your hand is up. It's still up. Let me put it down. Yes.
Sorry, I thought I just dropped it. I just want to answer for Jerusalem. Her request is what's the making the difference between buying and outsourcing. So the outsourcing is, for instance, Adidas. Last semester example was Adidas preparing the shoes, the core part prepared by itself, the other part outsourced to another organization. For the sole, they will prepare it by themselves, and the covering part prepared at China or India, some companies. Then that's the outsourcing. You provided some of your manufacturing part to another organization. But buying is if making is expensive and buying is less cost, you will buy the material or all the products from other company. That's my understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, that's very true. Remember, you can also outsource. I'm coming to you, Jerusalem, now. Remember, you can also outsource some like cleaning services in an office, right? Either you can employ somebody to clean the office. That means you are doing it yourself. Or you can employ a cleaning company to come and do the cleaning for you, right? Are we together? So I wanted to clarify that for Samuel. Okay, Jerusalem.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir, but it's not clear for me still, because if a company, for example, the Boeing company outsource all the spare parts in different countries in Southeast Asia, in Europe, and some part in South America, but they still buy those spare materials for making the Boeing airplanes. So if they buy the spare materials, how can we say it's 100% outsourcing? Of course, they say they outsource some part of their products, like what Konjit said on Adidas. Adidas also, they used to produce all the production on one side, but later on they try to follow a strategy of just making only the design, and the production will be in different countries. So even though they do the design part, they still just buying the products, or they just buy the spare materials from those companies that produce those spare parts. So for the Boeing, of course, I'm just referring for the Boeing and kind of companies. So how can we say that is there any clear demarcation between buying and outsourcing? It's not I didn't understand the real demarcation between the two. Thank you.
Simulants?
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor. To my understanding, Yorus, to my understanding, let's put it into two categories: make or buy, outsourcing and insourcing. Make or buy. When you say make, you don't need anything. Everything is done in-house, starting from purchasing raw material to the end of the product. We call it make. When you say buy, everything you do nothing. You give to someone else outside the company. So everything is finished from the scratch, from the beginning to the end, and you receive the product. This is, we call it buy. When you say outsourcing, insourcing, outsourcing means still you are making, you are the maker, but you outsource some of your not core decision making, like supporting departments. Like, you are a manufacturer, you produce, you see, you don't give the database. The database is with you, but you outsource some of the activities, supporting departments. It might be logistics service. It might be some ideas, some services. So when you say make, and you see, when you say make and outsource, it's not the like 100% you don't do. It doesn't mean that you don't produce. So make, when you say outsources, it is the opposite of make, but it's still you are making, but you are outsourcing, to my understanding, Doctor. You are outsourcing some of your supporting departments. When you say buy, do you understand, Yerus, what I'm saying? What I want to say is, so buy and make, outsourcing and insourcing is, it depending with the supporting departments. This is what I understand, Doctor. Hello?
Samuel, your hand is up again. Yes.
Yeah, I was, you know, when Shimelis was putting in parallel the making and the buying, and then the outsourcing and the insourcing, and he mentioned that if it is a total purchase of a product or a service from outside, it's buying. Whether if it is done in house, if everything is done in house, then it's making. And then he also added something later on, saying that we might be doing some of things, the core competencies. Then, if we are outsourcing or giving to third parties some of the supportive activities, he said. So he's like mentioning to a service, I mean, to those services which are, to me, is intangible thing. If it is accounting, it's accounting service. We can't buy account. It's not tangible. It's a service. Like Yunus was asking, for instance, she was mentioning about Boeing. We cannot purchase an aeroplane, but then we can buy the spare parts from different vendors. For instance, we're still buying some of. It's not the whole plane. For me, it's those spare parts which are tangible. We call them like buying. Uh, uh, Doctor, you also mentioned we might outsource the management. So if we are outsourcing the management, which is a service, then I still put it as outsourcing. But so to me, still, I felt like I might be wrong, but I felt like the making and the buying depends much on the purchasing of those products which we can touch, like the spare parts, maybe the things from outside. You also said that in quotes. Now, I understand that like making is something in quotes that we get from within. Then the buying is something we get from outside. But when I come to the terms, the outsourcing and insourcing, I thought it's like the service part of the buying and the making. That's what I felt.
But I would like to relate with the value chain.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Shimelis.
Shimelis, yeah.
Sami, you know what I want to say is, don't forget value chain. You see?
Yeah, definitely.
Let me tell you, when you think about value chain, there is into two. You have the core activities and supporting activities.
Okay.
So when you say that, buying means just you hire everything to the others. But outsourcing means you put your main database with you and you outsource some of your supporting departments from your value chain.
Which are? Tell me, which are?
Like purchasing, logistics service.
It's a service, yeah.
Services.
They're all service. Yeah, service, exactly.
But like what Adidas, what she said is, it's not like this. It's not the service. In Adidas, they put the databases with them. Still, it is outsourcing. You see, they don't make everything. They have the database with them, the design, like what Konji said, but they outsource the other products. So, what the difference between buy and outsourcing is? In the Adidas cases, for Adidas, they are outsourcing, not buying, because the database is with them. That is the design with them, but they order based on their design to the others. So it is called outsourcing. If it was buying, they don't have any database. Let me finish and I will come to you. Yes.
Okay. You know what?
Please.
The Adidas sell their design. If they sell their design, those who produce the product, they should get the design instead of producing the product. So here we can't say it is outsourcing. They're just buying it. Which one? The design part.
Yarus, let me tell you one thing. Yarus, if it was buying, Adidas give all order, 100% order, So they buy whatever product is there, and everything is with the supplier. But now what Adidas is doing, the database is with them. We cannot say they are making. Why? Because some database is with them, and they are outsourcing the manufacturing. So it is called outsourcing. We cannot say make. If it was make, everything must be finished with Adidas. Doctor, sorry.
Shimi.
Yes.
Can I, Shumil, still, Adidas having the design, it's insourcing. It's insourcing the design, which means they're having it. And years, they don't sell it. They have the patent, they give it away. Yeah, exactly. So hold on. So they give it for those manufacturers to do the manufacturing of the shoes according to their own patented designs, which means they're doing exactly. So they're insourcing. They're insourcing, right? They are insourcing the design. It's a service of a design.
The manufacturing.
Exactly. So they are buying that. They are making the buying decision of manufacturing those shoes which are tangible from other third-party companies. But then the design is still with them. It's insourced. To me, that's my understanding.
Absolutely.
All right.
Because they don't get right. Thank you.
All of you are right. All of you are right. Now this, I think, okay, somebody else, the hand is up before I say. I think I saw a hand up, somebody. Okay, I think the hand is down now. No, there are very thin lines when it comes to what we are discussing here. The only clear distinction is between making and buying. That's very clear, right? Because if it's buying, you are buying from outside, finished product or parts. That is called buying. If you are making, you are producing in your house, in your factory. So there is no big difference there. Now the challenge comes in insourcing and outsourcing. Now they are very closely related, right? Now I want to take you back to our discussion here, and we gave our definition here. I don't know whether, am I still sharing my screen there? Can you check?
Yes.
Let me change this. You can go down. All right there. Now that is in sourcing. Let's go to outsourcing. Now, do you have a definition here? Yes. You see now, when you are making an item or a part, then due to some reasons, you stop making, you stop manufacturing that part or that decision, then you outsource. We say that you outsource. That thing was previously being done by the firm. But now it has reached a time, you find that not competitive for you to do that job. So you must look for somebody to do that job, right? Then you outsource. That is what we call outsourcing. That's why I told when Samuel was talking, I told him, you can outsource both the product and the service. It's not just the service alone or the product alone. You can outsource. Now, the case of Boeing, maybe they outsource the engine from Rolls-Royce. I don't know the engine. I think somebody will tell us where they get their engine. If it is their flaps, maybe they are made by a different company somewhere else. They're the same to Airbus and so forth. They don't make everything, right? Reason being that they want to focus on the core, the most important aspect. And then they give the other experts to do their part, right? Because when it comes, for example, if you're talking about the engine, of course, Rolls-Royce have the best engine, I think in the world or something. Somebody will confirm that. So that is what we call outsourcing. You are making this thing, but now you stop making because it is more strategic It is more competitive, right? To stop making this thing in-house and get somebody to do it for you. That was outsourcing means. So that means if you have employees, you have 5 employees who cleans your office every day, but you've realized that paying them salaries, medical, pension, and everything is more expensive than getting a cleaning company that will be paying them on piecemeal. That's why you outsource. Those are some of the reasons you do outsourcing, right? So most of the times you find that when you outsource, you may either deal directly with the firm that is manufacturing, or you can even still deal with a third party, right? So that is basically outsourcing. You can read much about this and see even the challenges of outsourcing and what it is. Right? Now, outsourcing in the private sector has been working well in most organizations, but in the public sector, in the private sector has been working very well. In the public sector, especially in Africa, there are gray areas. Now, let's go to insourcing. Still outsourcing. Now, let's go to outsourcing. Now, outsourcing, you are reversing a buy decision, right? You've been buying, but you've realized that buying is not going to work. So what do? You reverse that decision of buying from outside and start making the product or service. That activity that you had given to somebody to do, you realize that that person is not going to meet the requirements that you want. So you take away that opportunity from that person or that organization where you are buying from, and then you start doing it yourself. That can also be either a product or a service that was previously purchased from outside, right? Now, you need also, the issue that Konji brought here, the question. The government of Ethiopia buys a product. That's a buy decision. Instead of making, they get a local farm to build the road, not to manufacture, but to build the road. Now, if the government of Ethiopia, through its rural organization, through its road organization, does the work, does the recovering of that road, that will be insourcing. Because the person who had been given the opportunity to work has failed. So you take the rights back to the organization that was buying the products and services, and the farm does the products and services itself. That becomes insourcing. But if the farm now, Shimiles, I'm coming to you, if now the farm, if the Ethiopian government, which had given a local farm to do the job, and they fail, and then they get another farm to do the job, it is still part of what? Buying, but now it falls under subcontracting, right? It is still buying, they are still buying. The national authority that deals with roads is not doing the roads themselves. It's still being done by a different partner. Just the way Boeing would be buying flaps from a Canadian farm, but it realized that those flaps are not good. So it goes to another farm in France and it buys the flaps. It is still a buy position, but now from a different supplier, right? Okay, now Shimiles, your hand is up. Tell us.
What could I understand from your discussion, what you are explaining to us? You are saying me, to my understanding, insourcing and outsourcing is just, as you said, it is just a process coming before we are making, and if you are going to buying now, it is called outsourcing. Before we are buying, now if you are going to make it, now it is called insourcing. So if I am clear, is it the process only coming from buying to making? It is called
Yeah, we are
process.
saying everything. You know, we are reversing a decision.
It's
If
just, okay, I understand. Now, so if it is
buy
so,
decision.
sourcing and making is the same, outsourcing and
That's what I mean. No, it's not the same.
the same.
Yes, it's not the same. If you reverse a buy decision, it becomes in-sourcing.
I understand. Yeah.
If the Ethiopian farm cancels the tender for the farm, call it ABCD, that was doing the carpeting of the road. And then the Ethiopian government does the road itself, that is in sourcing. You've canceled a buy decision. Are we together? You've
Yeah, I
canceled.
understand. Based on the make or buy analysis, based on
Yeah.
make or buy analysis, you come to the decision either to insourcing or outsourcing. So this is the process of coming from one step to the other or from the other step to the others. I
Yes.
understand. Okay, thank you, doctor.
But of course, again, I said that there's a lot of there's a lot about outsourcing and insourcing. Now, previously, actually, insourcing came a little bit late. We have been having most of the outsourcing only, right? But now there's clear distinction between outsourcing, you cancel a make decision. You are making, but you stop. So you get it from outside. But the other case is that you are getting it from outside, but you stop getting it from outside, start making it today. Now, let me give you a very good example before we wind up. I think time is going up. Now, as people grow old, most young people don't take food in their houses. Most, I'm saying most in quotes, not everybody, but most. I know most bachelors and spinsters don't like cooking at home. So they get food from the restaurant, right? They buy from outside. They don't cook, they don't make, right? But what happens when they get married? Most of them, not all of them, you have also seen couples taking food in the restaurants. But what happens when they get married? They have to reverse that decision, right? They are reversing the buy decision and they are making food for themselves, especially if they have children, right? And that becomes what? In-sourcing. Because they were buying previous, but
This
now
is
they are
good
making.
This is
Yes,
good example for Jerusalem. She's going to married, I think. She's buying, yeah, Jerusalem. This is good example for her. Still, she was buying from restaurant. Now she's going to marry.
Who is getting married?
Jerusalem.
Yes, Jerusalem. You make sure you invite me. I want to come and eat the cake.
Now she's coming from outsourcing to insourcing.
Yes, now she has been buying outside, but now she has to make it, right? Okay, another question. I think we need to break. I think time is up. Any question? Any question? Let me see the chat here, whether there is, yes, can we outsource from the part primarily? You should still be buying the service. Okay, I think we've had this discussion. This discussion can continue and continue for the whole day, for the whole night, but what is important is to capture the aspects. There's also very close similarities in between, but I think I've tried my best to be able to differentiate that. So I think the charts are well sorted. Now, another issue, which I think we can wind up this class. Another question or another comment? Another issue, any other issue that you need to be addressed? There being no other issue, then I think we can, yes, Samuel, your hand is up. Samuel? I think your hand is up.
My
On now, Mr. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay,
Yes.
so earlier you were discussing about this, the assignment So what was your final decision to do it in groups or individuals or hybrid?
No, you do it the way you want it to be done. The decision is yours. I have no problem. Just agree the best way, and then you do it the best way.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. All right, all right.
Thank you.
So no other business. I think we need to close this class. We meet on Thursday. I think that's all. That's all right.
Good
Yes.
night, Doctor.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Good night. Yeah.
Good night.
Okay. See you on Thursday.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.
በትምህርት ከፍ ብሎ መብረር ይቻላል። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ከከፍተኛ ትምህርት አግባብነትና ጥራት ኤጀንሲ ሙሉ ዕውቅናን ባገኘንባቸው በማስተርስ ዲግሪ ኤምቢኤ በስትራቴጂክ ማኔጅመንት፣ ኤምቢኤ በባንኪንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ ኤምቢኤ በቢዝነስ ሊደርሺፕ፣ ኤምቢኤ በሪስክና ኢንሹራንስ፣ ኤምኤስሲ በኢንተርናሽናል ትሬድ እና ኢኮኖሚክስ ዘርፎች በእውቀት ለመቅረጽ የበቁ ፕሮፌሰሮቻችን አረንጓዴ መብራታቸውን አብርተዋል። በነገራችን ላይ በኬንያ ሀገር ከሚገኙ ስመጥር ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች በሚመጡ ፕሮፌሰሮች የትኩረት መስክ ትምህርቶቹ መሰጠታቸው ልዩ ያደርገናል። በምርጥ የትምህርት ስርዓት የተገነባው ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ በመጀመሪያ ዲግሪ በአቪዬሽን ማኔጅመንት፣ በሆቴል ማኔጅመንት፣ በአካውንቲንግና ፋይናንስ፣ በማርኬቲንግ ማኔጅመንት አስተማማኝ ትምህርት ይገቢውና ራስዎንና ሀገሮን ይለውጡ። አድራሻ 22 አደባባይ ወደ ሾላ በሚወስደው መንገድ ላይ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ህልሞን እውን ያደርጋል።